just to introduce myself, I'm 𝗩𝗍𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 first time here and you're not aware of what is Women in Mining South Africa, it's a non-profit organization that is all about the empowerment of women in the mining industry and mentorship programs, coaching, development skills, passing it on and supporting each other in the difficult industry that we do work in. I'm very passionate about women in mining, and I'm very excited to host the Inspire Insights for this year. Together with me is our co-host Veronique, and she'll be giving us the sessions on the Inspire Insights. And to give you a brief bio on Veronique, she's a coach and a consultant, a master coach, a holistic counselor, and a Heal Your Life teacher. She gives coaching sessions and how to empower ourselves and make sure we develop ourselves. She's a passionate life transformation. Her passions are life in transformation, diversity, empowerment, complex trauma, health and wellness, and any person courageous enough to seek a more purposeful and peaceful existence. So welcome, Veronique. Thank you for hosting this sessions.
Awesome, thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you all again today, and I hope that you find today's session rewarding. Should we just dive into it?
Yes. So tonight's session will be about the hero's journey, and the questions that we've had on the posts that were sent out are: do you feel like you're on a hamster wheel going nowhere fast? Does everything feel like a drag? Has life lost its sparkle? And do you often wonder what the hell you're doing? And there's a way to take back your power, and that's what Veronique's going to talk to us about tonight, is the hero's journey. So off we go, Veronique.
Thank you. Somebody's in a waiting room there.
Yeah.
I can't click on it. Have you got it? Also, I've just minimized the pictures because I've got it on view so that I can tap through it. So if anybody, will you keep a little eye and see if anybody's asking questions? They're obviously welcome to ask questions in the chat box, or maybe if anyone raises their hands, because I can't actually see that. So if you could please be so kind as to just check out for that. And guys, as always, we obviously invite you to share and to ask questions and to get curious. And yeah, this is your space. We've created this for you, and we bring to you what we feel will add value to your life. So if there are questions or anything that you want to ask or share, or stories or relatable things, the more we talk, the more we realize we're all struggling with the same thing. So please, this is your space. Okay, so the hero's journey: slaying your dragons or following your bliss. Oh, now I want it to move. Okay. So let's start off with a question. How do you know that you're living your best life or not? Who wants to answer, or shall we pick on people? How do you know you're living your best life or not?
So I think for me, how do I know I'm living my best life is, I think mental health is very important for me. Once I know I'm kind of in a good space, I know I can be my optimal self. That's, for instance, one way of ensuring I'm living my best life. I mustn't be in a bad place mentally, because then I'm also not living my full purpose, perhaps.
Okay, that's a fair answer. Does anybody else have an answer or a point of view on this matter?
Janine in the chat box is saying for her, it's when she's achieved her goals.
Okay, so a sense of satisfaction in goal achievement. Yeah.
Charmaine is saying when you're content with everything you have.
Okay. Do we ever get really content with everything we have? But yes, that's something to strive for. Then we're living our best life. Yeah. All right. So we're obviously dabbling in the area, and you guys are spot on. I'm just having problems with my where to put this little viewer thingy, because it's like blocking my ability to click through, which is annoying. Are you guys seeing my whole screen, or are you seeing just the slide?
You're seeing the whole screen, so I can see on the side title and font and
Okay, you see, and as soon as I put it on complete screen, then I can't see.
and using the
Zooms.
arrows don't work to go to the next slide, Veronique.
No, so that works, but then I've got to move you out the way. So I'm literally only seeing what I'm sharing with you guys. I can't see what's going on. Okay, never mind. We flow as we go. Zoom's doing funny things. So how do we know? Let's unpack this question under the premise of Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces. So The Hero with 1,000 Faces is the book that Joseph Campbell wrote, and consequently that has been interpreted in so many ways, into movies, into stories. People use it in coaching, they use it in teaching people how to write screenplays, books, all sorts of things. But today we're going to look at it in a 3-phase, 12-step approach, although there are many interpretations of it. A little bit about Joseph Campbell. He was a New Yorcan that was very vested and interested in all the philosophies and religions and cultures of the world, and he actually taught at the university. And as he was learning and absorbing all of these philosophies and methodologies and religions, he suddenly came to the realization that they have one common formula, which has now become commonly known as the hero's journey. And basically what this hero's journey is about is it's a journey of self-discovery that guides you towards living a more fully realized life that is in line with your authentic truth. And part of that is also the struggles and the dragons and the demons that we face along the way, the obstacles and the challenges that we face along the way, because it's in conversion of those and transforming them that true growth and expansion really take place. So if there are any movies or books that you've read that maybe resonate with you on a very deep level, from rom-coms to the hero movies like Batman or Iron Man or whatnot, after today's session, I hope that you'll be curious enough to go and do your own research and see how the hero's journey plays out in each one of these stories, but more so the ones that talk to you and resonate with you personally. You will actually find that there's something in that that's teaching you or directing you to some aspect of yourself. Carla, can I ask you maybe just to put your microphone on mute, because I think there's some distraction coming in from there.
Apologies, I wasn't audible previously. Okay,
no
thanks.
Problem. Thank you, Carla. Okay, so basically phase 1 starts with what he called the separation phase. And this is where the hero leaves behind the familiar world. Oh, it sounds so fancy, right? But basically the ordinary world is the world as we know it today. It's our current status quo. It's the way that we understand our family to be, our relationships, our intimate relationships, our job, our environment, the status of our country. It's basically everything that we know in our life in this moment right now. And on a surface, all of that might seem okay, that there's nothing really to complain about. You're not necessarily feeling like there's anything that needs change. But on some level, you also know that you're not really living out your authentic truth. Because somehow, on some level, the world that you're living in has been influenced by your parents, by religious institutions, by society, cultural expectations of you, and various other things that have influenced your way of being and showing up in the world as you know it right now. What's important to note here is that this world, whether you are conscious of it or not, really has been created around the shoulds and should nots. And I think we're all familiar with those lists of shoulds, like I should go to the gym, and I should eat healthier, and I should watch less TV. Like if you catch yourself, whether you have caught yourself doing that, whether you're aware of it or not, from this moment on, take note of that, because where shoulds and should nots are at play, there's usually an element of inauthenticity, where you are actually acting on the expectations of something or someone outside of yourself. So for example, getting that job that was expected of you, but that your parents asked you to get, or basing your value or your self-worth on specific tertiary education. I cannot tell you how many men and women cross my couch who are very successful, who are very financially well off, but somehow feel insignificant because they never went to university, or because they never got that degree, and specifically because they didn't become a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant like their parents wanted them to. How many people wanted to become dancers or singers or actors, but were told by their parents that doesn't pay the bills, and therefore chose not to pursue that? Maybe being a woman in a man's world. One of the sessions we had last year was around imposter syndrome, where a lot of people, men or women really, who show up in a world and have thoughts of, oh, if people get to know me, they'll know that I'm actually a fraud, that I'm not that good, that I can't do this. There's insecurities at play behind the scenes. Or conforming to familial, societal, cultural, or religious expectations, and then feeling a sense of shame or being criticized when you have your own voice, or you challenge the status quo, or you have unique thoughts or questions around this, and not even to interrogate or challenge the status quo, but because you're trying to understand, and yet instead you get shamed or criticized for being otherwise. Or things like, if you're a woman, you should be married by 25, and if you're not, the anxiety that builds up and the questioning that maybe there's something wrong with you, or that you need to have kids before you're 30 because otherwise your eggs are useless. And again, the anxiety or societal pressure around it if you don't deliver or you haven't achieved that. Fitting in, like in terms of diversity, in terms of sex, a man's world, or you need to be like this, or you need to weigh so much, or you need to be tall, or all the labels that come with height and weight and sex and race and age and wrinkles and status and money and assets and where you travel and whether you wear a different set of clothes every day, or you look poor or frumpy, or have you got fancy nails, or are you fashionable? And again, the pressure is associated with if you don't fit in. And then there's one that I guess some of you can relate to, or maybe not, but I know that I can. When you climb that corporate ladder, only to discover that the wall that you were climbing up against didn't actually take you to where you wanted to be. So these are some of the shoulds or should nots, where you're doing something, but then it gives you this feeling of, but that's not what I want. That's not how I expected this to be. That's not the response that I wanted. So just with this as an opening discussion, I'd like to hear from you guys if you can think of any other shoulds or shouldn'ts that you've been told that maybe you struggle with, or that maybe haunt you, or that play out in your daily lives. Let's hear from a couple of you. I'd like another 5 or 6 shoulds or shouldn'ts, please. You're welcome to text or just do a shout out or put your hands up.
Ladies, this is a safe space. You're welcome to jump in. Please jump in and chat to us. This is when we get time to really draw from Veronique's expertise.
And I love engagement. You can see that I'm a chatterbox, guys, so I like to hear from you. I think there's some people in the chat box maybe that are saying some things. I can see the numbers, I just can't click on it.
So we have from Janine saying you should act like a lady.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Who decided, right?
Alka's saying you're too young to do this.
Yes. Or you're too old. Right.
I think
there's
for me,
another.
it's you should have been further in your career by now.
Yeah. You know, or for men, you know, if you haven't made it by the time you're 40, you're kind of like, you're a disaster. Like there's this perception that they need to be married, have a house with 3 bedrooms, 2 dogs, 2 kids, and a double garage. And if you haven't done that, then you're a loser. You know, there are so many of these shoulds and shouldn'ts, and even ones that have been indoctrinated into us that we on some level actually know are complete nonsense and not true, but have been so ingrained into cultural and societal norms that we don't even realize how they hold us back.
Yeah. So I see, Kate, you've unmuted yourself. Would you like to say something?
Yes, please. I know that there are still in today's society that some men still believe that women aren't supposed to be, for example, involved in family businesses or business at all. In my hometown, there's a man that does farmer. He's a farmer, and his wife and daughter know absolutely nothing about business, and he like blatantly said like women shouldn't know anything about business. They need to cook, clean, stay in the kitchen, and that's absurd. And it's still a thing today.
Yes, exactly. So you've mentioned 2 there. So women shouldn't be in business, and women should be in the kitchen and looking after the kids and doing the housework. You know, so there's all of these shoulds that come up. Women shouldn't speak, or people shouldn't speak up to their mother-in-law or their mothers because that's disrespectful. You know, you shouldn't call out family members even when they're being abusive or toxic. You know, I've heard so many stories of people who come and share with me that they were molested or raped and actually went to mum and dad to share what they've been through at a very young age, and were told to keep quiet and never speak about this again, because you should keep your mouth shut, because otherwise you'll bring shame to the family. And in this moment, hearing that, people shut a part of themselves off, and they actually struggle to have relationships from that moment on, because not only do they not trust the people who gave birth to them, but they don't trust any man or woman out there to come into their intimate and closed space, and they sabotage any potential for happy relationships. Hambulani wants to say something
in the chat box, Veronique. Also, another few shoulds is that I should have another child. I should be
yes.
It makes you look weak. I shouldn't be too friendly, sorry. It makes you look weak.
You see, once we get the shoulds and shouldn'ts going, they start rolling.
Yes, and then how can you travel so much for work and leave your kids behind? You should have a kid already, or you shouldn't be difficult, just do as you're told. Those are more from the chat box. And then we have another hand from 𝗩𝗲𝗿𝗂𝗂𝗕𝗿𝗄𝗏. Hi,
Yes.
𝗩𝗲𝗿𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗏, you can unmute yourself and chat to us. Lovely to
Hi,
see you.
okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes, hello.
I can't see myself and I'm busy here hiding my camera from the
You
back.
look stunning,
thinking you can
don't
see my
worry.
bedroom.
Go for it.
Okay, you know, for me, that what came first. Okay, someone mentioned it on the comment. I'm one person that my previous role, I used to travel from one province to the other. Like 1 week I will be in Limpopo, the other will be in Mpumalanga. So for me, it was that issue of people would always be asking me, no, man, you're married, you've got young kids, you shouldn't be traveling and leaving your kids at home. That's one thing that it used to give me a lot of anxiety every time I think, oh God, I'm going to go for days and I'm going to leave my kids away. But well, I get used to it along the way. And the other thing that came to my mind now as a parent of a young boy, there's one thing that we grew up knowing: men don't cry. So every time he cries, you know, and you tell me, no, cry, baby, cry, it comes to my mind that, oh, whoa, when we're growing up, we told men don't cry. What am I teaching him? Am I teaching him that he has to cry now? He have to, you know, show his emotions and express himself every time, which is something that is crucial for him to express his feeling. But when we grew up knowing that men don't cry. Even now at work, we struggle
Yes.
to get men to go for therapy because they don't believe in talking about their issues. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
There's shame associated with that. Thank you, 𝗩𝗲𝗿𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗏. That's spot on. So women shouldn't show anger. Men shouldn't cry or be emotional. Nobody should ever get upset and lose their stuff or speak their truth in any situation. So you can see there's a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts, and we can have a 2-hour session just listing all the shoulds and shouldn'ts. But what do they all have in common?
I would say they try to limit us.
Yes, they try to limit us, absolutely. And on an emotional perspective, what do they all have in common?
Don't they make you insecure?
Yeah, they give you anxiety. So they give you feelings that are not lekker. So whether it's anxiety, whether it's guilt, whether it's shame, whether it's I'm not good enough, there's an experience of not lekker. There's something that is not lekker. So even if you say to yourself, if you catch yourself, I should go to the gym now, underneath that there's probably you criticizing yourself for being overweight or being unfit or being lazy. There's layers going on there. So whenever there's a should or a shouldn't, and you catch yourself, whether you hear it from someone or you're saying it to yourself, become aware of what's going on in your body. And I can tell you that there is not going to be pleasant feelings ever. If you tell anyone you should clean your room or you should be on time, they're never going to go, oh, yay, thank you. I feel so excited about this message. There's never good, blissful feelings around it. Okay. So this is very important because very often people are not aware of their ordinary world. They will complain, they will blame, they will moan and whatnot, but they're actually still in a level of denial and dissociation of what's really going on. Because when you become aware of your should or your shouldn'ts and how they make you feel, that right there gives you an indication that you no longer want to be in the ordinary world. You want things to change. So if you're fine with your life as it is, and you can actually say that it's blissful and all the things that you guys have shared already, and all the frustrations and the shoulds and the shouldn'ts you're okay with, and they actually give you joy, which I sincerely doubt, then you probably probably find that you are also asking yourself the question, is there more to life than this? So if we remove, look, I can't complain, I've got food on the table, I've got a job, I've got a husband, I've got kids. If you remove that and kind of just get real and go, but something is missing. There's got to be more to this. And give yourself permission to not feel guilty about it, then stay. If your life is blissful, you're welcome to log off now, because the rest of the session is going to bore you. But if you are asking that there is more to life than this, then let's carry on. Because it's at this point, when you realize the shoulds and the shouldn'ts and the way that it makes you feel inside, that you are actually getting what Joseph Campbell calls the call to adventure. So what does this mean? If you are old enough to remember ticky boxes and landline telephones, you would hear the pring pring of the telephone and you would pick it up. I suppose it's true for a cell phone as well, but somewhere out of the blue, you could be walking somewhere and suddenly there's a phone that's ringing that's not attached to your hip and you are being called. So call it God or the universe or destiny or whatnot. You are being summoned to actually address something about yourself that you are ignoring. A part of you that you've left behind, because the truth is what happens, you are born pure, golden, fearless, filled with love, absolutely courageous, wanting to explore the world and bring it on. But then parents who are well-meaning, society, school, religion, start to put things on us, and we start to move parts of ourselves away, and we start to picard ourselves to survive and fit in to the world that we're born into to feel safe. That's based on the shoulds and the should nots that we've been told. The problem is at some point in our life, if those shoulds and should nots are not aligned with ourselves, we're going to feel an itch. And when that itch starts to happen, that's the call to adventure. Now, if we ignore the call to adventure, we can either go back to denial, which is almost unlikely after this conversation, or we need to address it. And if we don't address it and we stay in the shoulds and should nots, then we ultimately have things happen to us like disease, breakups, divorces, getting fired. Very often these are things that happen that we already felt on some level, but we chose to ignore and dissociate from. Okay. So when we get this call to adventure, the way that, again, Joseph Campbell describes it, I've put in quotations there, is that people tend to wake up to the fact that they are the hero in their own life when they are tired of being the victim of their own life. So when you give yourself permission to go, okay, I have a good job, I did my university, I ticked all the boxes, but something is off and something needs to shift, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. Because the truth is this, guys, ladies, 2 to 3 generations from now, all 20 of us that are here today are going to be lucky if we are even remembered. So to spend your life worrying about what people think and about what we should and shouldn't do is no way to live. It's your life. You have been put into this world to become the hero of your own story. So it's up to you to become aware of those itches and those scratches and those discomforts that you feel when you're doing something or showing up in a way that is not aligned with who you are. In essence, you are being called back to your true selves. And you will keep being scratched and you'll keep being nudged and life will keep happening until you listen. So at this point, you are faced with a challenge to either accept or reject this call to adventure. And it can be a literal call. Like I said, you could be offered a job overseas. You might be married and you are offered a job overseas. Now, do you not take the job? Do you stay in South Africa? You know, these are the kind of things that show up in your life that start to test you. And if you are acting out of what other people expect of you, you run the risk of becoming filled with bitterness, jealousy, sadness, anxiety, depression, sickness, tummy issues, heartburn, autoimmune diseases. So you have a choice to keep living in the illusion of what other people expect of you, or you can take the call to action, or the call to adventure, and take it on and see what happens. I think someone put something in the chat box because I saw the number go up.
They said like a hallelujah type of thing. Hands in the air. Like
Okay.
saying this is fantastic, but I also feel like it's very profound to say you need to stop being the victim of your own life. See yourself as the hero and have guts to actually maybe make the difficult decision that's keeping you back from having a purposeful life, isn't it, Veronique?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think most of us have watched that movie, Eat, Pray, Love. You know, she had a successful career. She was married, and one day found herself sitting on the floor, because it's based on her life story, sitting on the floor in the bathroom going, God, I hate my life, and I feel so guilty because I hate my life. And then the next day she basically tells her husband, I want to divorce you, and she doesn't know what she's going to do with her life. But she knew something had to change, and she acted on that call to adventure. She knew something had to change. She knew that the relationship wasn't giving her what she wanted. And all she could come up with was three things. One was Italy, because she wanted to learn Italian and she enjoyed the food. The other was that she wanted to learn a little bit more about spirituality, so went to India. And the third was that she went to Bali because she always wanted to go there. And then, you know, it basically catapulted her into her writing the book about her call to adventure as it unfolded. She had no idea what was going to come, and she became an international author that eventually people made a movie about, and then she met her husband, and consequently she's divorced him and came out the closet and is lesbian. So the story continues. But you know, these are examples.
Booking our flight tickets.
Katie raised her hand while she's coming on to ask her question. I don't know if you guys have heard of that book, The Monk Who Sold His Red Ferrari, or something like that. I forget the author now. But he also was a very successful corporate guy who said, you know, I can't do this. I've got all this money, got all the status, but all I do is work. I can't even sleep because I'm so stressed the whole time. And he quit his job, went on a sabbatical, you know, sold all his fancy stuff and found his bliss. So when you feel that scratch, where you're in that space where I can't complain, guilt comes up. No, don't complain. Shh, keep quiet. Now you're pushing yourself back into denial. You want to say, no, I don't want to be in denial because my life is finite. I have so many years to live. Am I happy to live the rest of my life like this? If I'm not, I'm going to listen to that scratch, that itch that's showing up right now, and I'm going to try to figure out what my next step is. And sometimes you don't know what that next step is, but just becoming aware of that is the call to adventure. Katie wanted to ask something.
I don't want to ask something, but I want to state something, if that's okay. So this whole, what we're talking about reminds me of the self-actualization theory of Maslow's hierarchy table. Have you guys heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the top is self-actualization. So it's realizing your full potential. And then it is your esteem, having respect for yourself and others. And then third is relationships. And is a sense of belonging and love. But his hierarchy at the top is self-actualization. Finding your individual creativity, your quest for spiritual alignment, pursuit and knowledge, and
So,
the desire.
Katie, may I respectfully interrupt there? So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a continuum, but it's a separate tool altogether. So today we're talking about the hero's journey as a tool. So I'm very passionate about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and there's many interpretations of that. Maybe we can park that, and that could be something we discuss in another session, because that's a completely different approach to self-actualization.
Yeah, just this whole conversation reminded me, I'm a psychology student, so it reminded me of the
Thank you for sharing. And I'm loving the excitement. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs would actually be relevant to each one of these steps. And if that's something you want to explore, we can do that offline, because we don't want to keep the 20 people waiting for this particular. Is that okay? But keep the passion alive and keep sharing. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so we've got the call to adventure.
Veronique, we just have a question in the chat box. Perhaps I can just
Yes.
Aren't there many situations where you just can't change your life? You can't just make your kids grow faster. You can't
Who's asking
the place where you are? Isn't the call to adventure not a very privileged perspective? And that's 𝗩𝗲𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗓 question.
Love that question, 𝗩𝗲𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗧. You're on to the next stage. So can we park that question until we get to number 3? Because that is answered in number 3. You are completely on the hero's journey. Well done. And was there somebody else that wanted to ask something?
No, she just said, sure, we can continue with the call to adventure.
So most of us have kind of, sold our souls to the system, or to the society, or the culture, or the class, or the status, or the religion, or whatnot that we have been born into. And unless we get that scratch, then we remain one of the sheep. So we can't judge that. There are a lot of sheep. We need sheep in the world. And the way that the world is set up, the way that society is set up, the way that culture is set up, the way that politics is set up, is that the food that is put out there on media, on the shelves in the supermarkets, in the schooling systems and everything, it feeds us to remain diligent sheep. And it does that very well because it also instills fear. It tells us to be afraid of God. It tells us to be afraid of our parents. It tells us to be afraid of the headmasters and the teachers, or we're going to get into trouble. It doesn't actually stimulate us to challenge, be creative, and address those scratches and those itches that we have. And some people stay in that life for the rest of their life, and that's okay. But some people don't want to be a sheep. Some people want to be a herderer, or a tiger, or an eagle, or a something else. And then the first question that pops up, but what if I can't hear the call, or I can't decipher the scratch, right? So one of the things that you can try, because you might not be resonating with the shoulds or the shouldn'ts. You might just feel generally unhappy or not at ease with your life, but you don't really know, and you want to find a scratch to give you some direction. So the word exploration comes up. And again, if you look at children, babies particularly, 1-2 years old, they teach us so much. They will go and explore fearlessly. So connect with that part of you that explores. Try things that you've never done before. Speak to people that you've never thought of speaking to. Give a random stranger a compliment in the parking lot and see them like get shocked and then really happy because somebody made their day by saying something nice. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations at least once every 7 days. That doesn't mean go blow up buildings or murder someone. What that means is you want to step out of your comfort zone and stretch yourself. Maybe wear a skirt above your knees and notice that you actually survived and nobody even said anything. You know, maybe don't cover up, show some cleavage, or maybe show less cleavage if all you ever do is show cleavage. You know, basically do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do, or where you feel resistance in your body going, oh, if I speak now, they're going to think I'm stupid. Or, you know, if I smile at the guy in the car next to me, he's going to think I'm a retard or whatever. Catch those thoughts and do it anyway, in spite of. You know why? Because the universe rewards action and faith. And so many people who praise the Lord and go to church and stuff do not actually understand the concept of faith. They spend their life trying to create certainty. Faith is acting in life, behaving in life, doing things, trusting and allowing a process, even though you don't know what the outcome is. Faith is about giving up control. So the key is to do things differently and to do them often, because if you want your life to change, you can't keep doing the same thing. So even if you haven't felt the scratch, but you feel that something is off, start to explore and do things differently. Because in the doing things differently, you're going to start to feel the scratches and the itches and the resistance or the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. And they will start to direct you. So basically, yes.
I have an experience that I want to share.
Yes.
I had a speaking opportunity in the beginning of this year. And it was really like very cool, very exciting. But when I got off the stage, I felt very disappointed in myself. And I think it's because I stretched myself. It was a real stretch, but then it was kind of the imposter syndrome, or the, oh man, was I good enough? Or should I have even had to be on the stage? And
there's the should.
Yes. And I think I'm excited to hear what's the next step as well, and how when you're stretching yourself, it's not comfortable. You're not always gonna say, oh, that wasn't too bad. Sometimes it's going to happen and it's going to be like, okay, gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done it this way, or it can be a learning curve, or you can also just be kind to yourself and say,
well, that's the thing. You showed up. You showed up and you did it.
Yes.
And even if there was one person in the audience or 3 claps, it was one person and 3 claps more than you had the day before. And it was one stage performance under your belt that you'd never done before.
Yes.
And it was a muscle that you stretched that you'd never stretched before. So you haven't lost anything. And in that, if you were to unpack it, and if we were, for example, to have a coaching session, I would ask you questions like, what did you gain from that? Because you're very good at saying what you didn't gain from it. The shoulds and the shouldn'ts and the criticizing, which again is other people telling you how to be perfect. But asking yourself, what did I gain from it, is a good place to start, because that starts to push you towards, I actually really enjoyed being on the stage, but I want more of an audience. So the next challenge, can you see, is that how do I get more people in the audience? And it starts to snowball. Okay. Another way is, based on this quote, follow your bliss and the universe will open doors where there were only walls. And if you can imagine someone saying to you, walk through this wall, and you're going to go, no, not because that's a wall, I'm going to hit my head. But again, through trust and faith and allowance, if you walk, if you start to move, if you start to have action, then suddenly things start to appear where you could never have imagined that they would. So what does that look like? Okay. What does following your bliss and letting life surprise you look like? It's basically listening to your heart and following your truth. So on the one hand, you can be going and exploring and stepping out of your comfort zone and seeing where that takes you or what that teaches you about yourself. But on the other hand, you can go, what actually gives me a sense of joy and bliss? And then do more of that. Now, you'd be surprised how many people don't do any of this because they don't have time. I mean, after today's conversation, if you think that you're doing everything that you should and shouldn't be doing, but you're not even giving yourself a little bit of time to do things that give you bliss, what does your trajectory look like? I don't have to tell you, because you are destined for a very unhappy life that probably has a lot of struggle, that probably has a lot of miserable feelings, and probably has sickness and disease around the corner. Because joy and bliss is where you fill up your battery. If you're always working like a cell phone, if it's always working, but you don't actually recharge the battery, at some point that phone is going to cut out and die and not work at all. It's no different for human beings. So following your bliss can also mean doing things that people will say to you, are you mad? Are you crazy? You can't do that. But something inside of you goes, but it just feels right. I can't tell you why, but it just feels right. So when Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak did their first sale, Steve Jobs went into Caddyshack in California, and they went to the potential buyer there, and he really believed in Steve Wozniak's computer. And with conviction, he sold this computer, and the guy eventually said, okay, cool, I'll order 400 units. So then they kept themselves together, and then they walked out, and sort of when they were around the corner, they like high-fived and went like, woohoo, we got our first order of 400 units. And they even sold it at like some ridiculous price that no one had done before. And then they were like, oh shit, but they don't actually have any money, because they were basically hippies living in a commune with this great idea. So Steve Jobs actually went back inside the shop and said, you know, in order for us to believe that you're serious about this order, we're going to need the payment up front, and then we will deliver. And he said it with such conviction, and he believed in his heart and in his bliss and in his truth so much that the guy said, okay, and wrote him a check. And Apple was born. And, you know, today it's one of the big multi-million-dollar companies that we all know about and use on the phones and the laptops. But it's about acting on those things where everything inside of you comes alive, where you actually feel alive. It's not, by the way, about ecstasy or escapism or shopping or porn or indulgence or overeating or drugs or getting drunk and falling over and partying till all hours and getting high and being on long-term drugs and addictions that keep you numb and dissociated. So bliss is not about any of those. In fact, all of those keep you in stage one, which is the denial stage. It keeps you away from yourself, it keeps you away from your truth, it keeps you away from your bliss, and it keeps you away from the hero that's inside of you. Basically, bliss is what makes you feel alive. So whatever you want to do that makes you feel alive, do that, because that is where your bliss is. So what are some examples that make you guys feel like alive? I'll start. I love hiking. So the funniest thing is, I complain the whole way up the mountain. I sweat, similarly to what I am now. It really is very hot in my office here right now. And I'm like, oh, why do I do this to myself? And then I get to the top of that mountain and I'm just like, this is it. And when you go through all of those little passages and the caves and the waterfalls, it just makes me feel alive. And there's just nothing better. Yeah.
I share the sentiment. I think I go not necessarily hiking. every day, but I do go for a walk, especially when it's been a tough day and I feel so frustrated. I want to just hit something, but then I actually go and take a walk with the dog, with the husband, and it makes me feel so good. But then there's obviously bigger blisses, bigger happiness, like traveling or being next to the ocean or something like that.
Yeah. So what are some other examples of bliss? Let's hear from the peeps with us. You see, okay.
Yay. Go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yep, we can hear you now.
I love traveling, you know, and I'm one person that does not plan. When I travel, I just go, okay, I feel like traveling. Then I get in my car, let's start driving. I will see as I go. And my husband is used to it now. We just drive, let's drive to Durban. We will see as we go, we'll buy clothes there, we will find accommodation when we're that side. But it brings bliss in my life.
You see, it's exploring.
Yes.
You see how bliss and exploring and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone start to link up. Thank you for saying that.
𝗩𝗲𝗿𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗴𝗲𝗂 on the chats are saying she loves traveling, and Charmaine is saying dancing and traveling.
Dancing. Okay, that's another one. So, oh, sorry, I accidentally pushed that. The important thing to recognize when you're following your bliss, notice from the examples that have been given, that following your bliss is about you taking yourself and doing something and experiencing something new and some level of growth or expansion in you. It's not about delivering on somebody else wanting you to do stuff. If they give you a pat on the back, that's great, but that's just momentary. Bliss is something that it almost like ignites your soul. So when you go traveling, or when you're able to share a story that ignites somebody else's life to be changed or gives them hope, you know, or you go to a new country and then in doing that, when you come back, you realize that South Africa is actually quite amazing and its people are quite extraordinary. Can you see that it has an impact on a much bigger picture of your life? It's not a momentary gratification like buying a clothes or a car or a house.
Tata has
Tata
her
wants
hand
to say
raised.
something.
Veronique, she can give us another example.
Good evening, guys. I'm not going to give another example. I'm just going to share my thought on the question. The question that was posed was, what is your bliss? And me just trying to figure out that it brought a whole lot of things to my mind, because I'm trying to determine if that is really my bliss. So I think for most people, the first step is to determine exactly what it is that makes you feel alive. Because in some instances, you might be in a moment of bliss, but in essence, what you'll be doing is escaping from something. So I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, Veronique, that sometimes we might feel that you know what it is that really does make you feel happy, but in essence, it's not. So I think in all this, the first step would really to be true to yourself and find that and be able to answer that question. Before you can even say, this is what I'm going to follow, what do you need to follow to find that will make you feel blissful? That's just what came to my mind.
So you've actually pinpointed the first point on my next point, which is ask yourself, what am I passionate about? And then just see what pops up, because a lot of people might think that for example, overeating is giving them a sense of bliss. But when you actually check in with yourself, you know that it's not, because you know that it's doing damage and you know how you feel afterwards. Bliss is not something that is momentary. It fills you up. So if it's momentary and then it's followed by a sense of guilt or shame or loathing, then you know that it's not bliss. So some of the things that you can ask yourself if you want to go about finding your bliss is, what am I passionate about? What are you doing when the hours just fly by? That could be spending time with someone. It could be painting. It could be writing. It could be walking in nature. It could be cooking meals for loved ones. But basically just catch yourself when those moments where you go, sure, time flies when you're having fun. That often is an indication to something that is directing you to your bliss. What are things, activities, hobbies, and things like that you love doing and that you cannot imagine life without? That if that stopped, you wouldn't be able to, like, life just wouldn't be the same again. Sorry, Tato, did you want to ask something else? I see your hands.
No. Oh, sorry. No, that was just my input there, Veronique. Thank you very much for that. Yes.
Thank you, Tato. Sorry, no, because I saw your hand still up.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I think I've lowered it now.
Another good question to ask, and this one might get the scratch going, is what did people criticize you or ridicule you for, and what made you different as a child? Because very often in those two things lie your greatest powers. Because it's the very thing that made you not a sheep. It's the very thing that actually made you stand out. Another question you could ask yourself is, if you had endless money or time, how would you spend your days? And if you're not spending your days the way that you would be if you had endless time and money, then you know that something is off with your life. And then you got to ask yourself, what do I need to change, and follow my compass? So basically get to know yourself and your dreams and where you want to be and where you're not acting in your truth. Because again, and I'm saying this again because let it sink in, our life is limited, our time is limited. And if you don't live it in the way that you want to, the only person you're hurting is yourself. Okay. Oh, and this one, I love this one. So as Joseph Campbell said, don't do what mommy or daddy told you to do, because all they wanted for you is security. So if you listen to them, you'll never find your bliss.
I think,
all right.
Veronique, if you can just go back to the questions you asked, and it's about, oh, sorry, you have to go through the whole slide. I wrote them down. But the one about what made you different as a child, and I can clearly remember the things that made me different as a child, but I was told, you can't behave like this, you can't be like this, because this is not what society wants you to be. So how to rewire all of that? I mean, it's 30 years almost. And
well, it starts with awareness. So for example, somebody who is a talkative child and who was always getting into trouble for talking, and was told you mustn't talk and you need to be quiet and be seen and not heard, and then goes on to become an accountant, you can imagine that that person is going to be miserably unhappy, because they were designed to talk and share and express themselves. So if they actually leverage that, they could become one of the world's most motivational, most inspiring motivational speakers, or maybe a great therapist, or a social worker, or somebody who holds space, or somebody brilliant at sales. But because the parents or society had told them, no, sales is a stupid job for idiots, you need to become an accountant, they have bought into the shoulds and shouldn'ts, and now are going to sit in an office by themselves, miserable, taking antacid tablets, anti-anxiety meds, depression meds, thinking there's something wrong with my head, but actually the signs are all there. So take those answers that you have. Let's carry on with the journey, because maybe you will discover some ways to tackle it. And if not, that is obviously where somebody like myself could work with you on a one-on-one basis to help you uncover that. Because obviously overcoming those obstacles and changing that, it can be a very, very big pivot that involves a lot of people. But again, you got to ask yourself, you might be dead tomorrow, and then what? Those people will carry on. Life will go on. The world does not revolve around each single one of us. So you owe it to yourself to live your best life. If you're not, you are going to become a miserable douchebag. And if you are a miserable douchebag, how are you adding value or sunshine to anybody else's life? This is what you want to ask yourself. And you've just shown through the example that you gave there how you mustn't always necessarily listen to what mommy and daddy told you to do, because you are going to tuck away parts of yourself that make you who you uniquely are. And that could be your superpower to changing life. So even if we don't know it, why then don't we follow our bliss or answer our call to adventure? So that's what we're circling back to. And the answer really is quite straightforward. It's fear, resistance, and insecurity. You've just mentioned insecurities. 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗧, I think, was the one that mentioned, we can't just change our life. Isn't that kind of a privileged perspective on things? Can you see that those are fears, resistance, and insecurities coming up? Ironically, most of the multi-billionaires in the world, whether it was Steve Jobs, whether it was Gandhi, whether it was Mandela, whether it was Elon Musk, whether it was Richard Branson, they basically started, even the guy that started Amazon, they basically started with nothing. So if it's true that we can only achieve if we have money, and we can only achieve if we are a particular color or race or whatever, and we buy into the shoulds, shouldn'ts, and the limitations and stuff, then basically we are paving the road with our own limiting beliefs. Those people took that and said, screw you all, I'm going to show up and I'm going to become a hero. And they did. Against all adversity, against all fear, against resistance, against insecurities, against being bullied, against being told that they're useless, that they can't, that the world will never have one of these machines to work on. Why do they need one when they have a notepad and a television and a telephone? And yet, I don't think any one of us doesn't have one of these, or a computer for that matter. But that is what the guys from Apple and IBM and stuff were told. So fears, insecurities, and resistance is so important to be aware of, because they actually direct us. So this is where, to answer Alka's question, when we have the refusal of the call, we get to a threshold where things like, what will they think of me, must be put aside. Where if I do this, then, where all the conditional stuff and the potential catastrophizing that could go wrong needs to be put aside. Because the minute that we refuse the call, we basically put ourselves back into denial, and we're back into stage one, where we are just in this world as we know it, telling ourselves that we're happy, but we're actually not. So realizing that perhaps life isn't all that it was cracked up to be, we might even begin to bargain and be like, you know what, I don't really want drama and conflict in my life, and my life's not that bad, so let me not go and take the baby out the bath water, or upset the apple cart, and I just settle and I become complacent and I just become stagnant. Because the truth is, change is difficult. And fear is a very powerful thing that can very quickly take over. It can get into our head. It will give us a list this long, once again, of all those shoulds and shouldn't and all the things that can go wrong and what people will think of us and what they will say and how you can lose everything. But in doing that and giving that up, you also turn your back on yourself and your potential for greatness. And unfortunately, the itch never goes away, because once you've become aware of it, it's going to scratch. It's going to be like that annoying, tiny, teeny little stone that gets into your shoe that you keep trying to get out, but every time you walk, it like moves around and it like pushes into your foot, and you know, it's just there. There's just no way back. The hero inside of you will resist and will say, no, we need to go and act on this call for adventure. And then you are faced with the choice to act on it or go back. But before you make that choice, or there may be an inclination to go ahead and make a change, but you're a little bit uncertain, you're a little bit fearful, you're not quite willing to go back into denial, but you're also not quite willing to take action. So you seek out a mentor. And a mentor can come in many ways. I'm sure you've all heard that saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So when there's this thing inside of you, you kind of putting it out into the universe, and God listens, and things serendipitously start to happen. Google might be listening, and suddenly you get pop-ups on your Facebook and your Instagram and all that stuff with relevant topics and videos and self-help videos. You know, it's uncanny, quite freaky, really. Or you might actively go and look on YouTube for ways. You might read books, you may tap into motivational speakers, you may do some courses, you may actually seek out a coach or a counselor or somebody to bounce off, because if you're a talker, you want to be able to speak and engage. You might be sitting on a bus on the way home, having the worst day of your life, and suddenly this person sits next to you and says something that fundamentally changes your life. Or something will pop up that makes you go, sure, this is talking to me. This is the third time this has happened in the last 4 days. I can't ignore this anymore. Some people might even go on some new age psilocybin journeys, which seem to be the new pattern, where they feel something is off and they don't know how to act on it. Can you guys think of any other ways that you can tap into teachers or mentors, or ways of maybe getting to the crux of, do I go back to denial, or do I go and bring about this change and act on this call to action? Okay, we move on. No other forms of resource or access that we can tap into? Maybe personal experience of something that popped up?
For me, Veronique, I was a 2021 mentee for 𝗻𝗲𝗃, and that was like a mentoring program, a group mentoring program, and that definitely helped so much and changed my thoughts, made me take the leaps of faith, stretch myself.
Wow.
Definitely not always just the teacher to rock up, but also if you're feeling the itch, you know something needs to change, you can also go out there and look for it. There are
right,
so many forms and so many ways to do it.
And it can also be a physical change. It can be an emotional change. So you can see that life is teaching us in so many ways. It's like, we've all had those days, and I think you've even seen the ads where you wake up and you kind of fall out of bed, and then your hair is like this, and then you open the door but the handle falls off, and then you open your cabinet to brush your teeth, and then the thing that the toothbrush sits in falls and breaks on the ground. And there's this resistance that's showing up. And if you don't listen, next thing you know, you might be in an accident. But if you'd actually noticed the signs that something was trying to stop you, maybe you would have just paused for a second and gone, okay, I surrender. Let me just chill for a second because something is trying to stop me. So teachers come in the form of many different signs, in physical form as actual teachers, as mentors, as philosophers, guides, therapists. You could meet somebody sitting on an airplane in your travels. And of course, actual experiences, putting yourself out of your comfort zone and going and doing those out of comfort zone things where you're stretching yourself in themselves also teach you some of your greatest lessons, because it's when we are willing to fail and actually make mistakes that we also discover our strengths and our weaknesses and what we want and don't want. So it's at this point that we enter phase 2. Of course, if you've decided to go back to denial, we don't go into phase 2. But if you decide to take on the call to adventure, then this is where we must be willing to let go of the life that we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Now, I'll give you an example here. So many people have this idea of what an intimate relationship should look like. And notice I use the word should. So they create so many expectations of their partner, how their partner needs to be, how they need to show up, how they need to show love, how, like, they've got a list of how they should be. And if they don't, either they cannot continue in that relationship, or that relationship is extremely difficult, or they end up divorcing, or they never end up actually committing to that person because they're always looking for something better out there. And I think we can all relate to that somehow, even if it's not in an intimate relationship, maybe in a work relationship, because relationships are with everything that we have, with the computer that we have, with the car that we have, with the fridge that we have, with the food that we eat, with the friends that we have, with our parents, etc. Relationships are everywhere. So if we are attached to the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, we are going to create a very limited little picture of what that relationship could offer us. But if we're willing to let that picture go and open ourselves up, then that computer, that car, that parent, that partner, that child, that colleague, that job, that expedition, that journey that we go on can present so much more than what we have in our head. Because when we get attached to that little picture, we put blinkers on. And sometimes there is magic and love and awesomeness right in front of us, even opportunity, even promotions, even a guy sitting on a bus next to us that is giving us the dream job that is something completely different than what we're doing now, but he sees it in you. But you are not going to strike up a conversation with that person because you are so attached to the life that you have decided it must be. And the truth is, when you try to control things, you're actually in denial of your fear. Because nothing is controllable. Nothing in life is certain. And if you look around you, nature, you can't control the way a jacaranda tree grows. You can't control the weather. We have no control over that. But do we go, it's wrong, and go into like an existential crisis because we're having a heat wave? No, we'll complain about the heat wave, but we get on with it, right? Yet we don't apply it to our own lives and our own relationships. And therefore we miss out on so much. So we have to cross the threshold. And this is where, 𝗪𝗪, we get over that limiting belief of, isn't that, a privileged way of thinking? And we explore, what is it that has us attached to that? Because behind that, there's probably some fear. And this is the moment where the hero within us, chooses to pursue that challenge. They're not necessarily right in it yet, but they're at the door. They're deciding to change. They're deciding to take something on. And it's the moment that their transformation, or their initiation to their transformation, and that's why it's called the initiation stage, begins. At this point, there is no turning back. They know that something needs to change. They have a goal. There's something there that they want to reach. Or maybe they've decided they're no longer going to tolerate abuse. They're no longer going to tolerate discrimination. They're no longer going to tolerate being disregarded or unappreciated, or doing all the chores at home whilst having a full-time job, whilst hubby decides, he's a man, all he does is provide money. No longer tolerating this. So it can be in a decision to no longer tolerate stuff, or it can be in a decision to go after something in a positive way. It's a decision that something needs to change, or that something needs to be challenged. And sometimes we don't actively pursue the first three stages and end up here. Sometimes life actually flings us into this point where, for example, we get given a scary job opportunity, or where we're cornered by our abuser, or we receive some shocking information. Sometimes we're flung into it and we actually have to deal. So at this point, you leave behind the world as you know it. And remember, that world can be a relationship, a way of showing up in the world. It can be the world itself. It can be politics. It can be the family. It can be a relationship with your parents. But basically, that world on that particular topic no longer is what it was. And there is no point of return from here. Life will never be the same in this regard. Whether you choose that or not, there is no more going back. Okay. So you can see that at this point, courage is the ingredient that you have to somehow find in order to deal with this call to adventure. And this is also the point where you're going, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Why is this happening to me? What is going on? Because your whole world can be turned upside down. I can share a personal story with you. In the last 3 years, I've lost 21 people, including my entire family. I always had a relatively tumultuous relationship with my mom, who consequently also had Alzheimer's dementia, so I couldn't get closure with her in terms of our relationship either. She was abducted. Anyway, long story short, my world was turned upside down, and in digging, in trying to make sense of it, in trying to control it, in trying to make it go back to the way it was, all I uncovered was more skeletons in the closet. And I basically had to face the fact that everything that I knew from childhood up until 2 years ago wasn't how I imagined or thought it was. And my whole world turned upside down. So at this point, you're here, you're making a decision to leave behind anger or sadness or disappointment or being tired all the time or being resentful or feeling hopeless or being humiliated by someone that you love so much or being unappreciated, or you're choosing to stop certain addictions or all your addictions, you're choosing to leave behind toxic relationships or habits that hinder you, or you're choosing that you're not going to be complacent and stagnant anymore. You're going to go out and live your life, even though you're not entirely sure where you're going or where you'll end up. But you've made a decision that enough is enough and something is now going to change. And I'm going to walk away from something that no longer serves me. Because you are choosing a space where you are accepted for who you are, where forgiveness comes easy, where there's a sense of peace, where you can grow, where there's trust, where there's safety, where there's a sense of belonging, where there's harmony, where there's meaning, where you can tap into your bliss, where you feel seen and heard, where you feel understood, where you feel appreciated, where you feel that most of the time you are living a life that is aligned with your truth, with your authentic truth, and what you as a human being who is alive today absolutely deserves. If you are experiencing anything less but that which is in that green box most of the time, because struggle does happen and we all make mistakes and we can all lose our crap sometimes, we're all human, we're all flawed. So most of the time, if you are not experiencing what is in that green box, then something is off and something needs to change, because you deserve that. And when you do that, you're doing this on raw courage, bravery, and willingness. And in the face of fear and not knowing and a lot of uncertainty. But on some innate instinct level, you know that you deserve and you want better. And something in this life needs to change. And this is where the adventure truly begins. Dun, 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 you head off into the forest all by yourself, because no one actually really understands. No shrink, no therapist, no coach, no psychiatrist, no partner, no parent, no one in the world truly ever will and can understand your experience of your life and your choices and what you're going through. And once you enter this new adventure, you are going to be tested, you are going to meet allies, and you are going to meet enemies. So you are going to be tested because you're going to have resistance that pops up that makes you go, are you sure you want to do this? And you're going to go, oh no, I want to back out. No, I'm going to keep going. Are you sure you want to do this? Oh no, I want to back out. No, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so that's kind of the experience of the test. The allies will come and go, you are so brave. Oh my God, I can't believe you did that. That's amazing. And they will cheer you on, and you'll be surprised. Very often the enemies are the people that you actually thought were your allies and your friends. And very often the allies can be the people that you thought were your enemies, or people that you didn't even know noticed you. Suddenly they come out of the woodworks and they are the ones celebrating you. But the ones who've known you all your life are the ones trying to pull you down and go, no, you can't. Don't do this. What's wrong with you? Or they'll back out, or they'll bail on you when you absolutely need them. So this is the point where you start giving it your all. And you trust the process and nothing seems to make sense, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. So if you speak to anybody who started new businesses, they can give this to you in very great detail. Read biographies, watch movies about biographies. This is a very crucial time. Steve Jobs even said in one of his speeches to I think it was the Harvard students, either Berkeley or Harvard students, he said, you can never connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. The key is that you need to keep going. You need to trust that faith within you, and you keep going. Because all the stuff that didn't make sense now, all the stuff that happened to you, the people that you lost, the job that you spent 20 years at and then they retrenched you, whatever, all the stuff that didn't make sense. When you actually keep going and you look back, you're like, okay, I see now why that happened. Okay. So it's in this phase that all these tests and the allies that you meet and the enemies that you meet, you got to trust the process, and instead of getting stuck in the emotions or the pain or the situation, trust that they are preparing you and equipping you with the tools that you are going to need to overcome your adversities. So even though everything might feel very unstable and it's uncharted territory and stuff, you may even start to get angry and frustrated, but you got to push through that resistance and that confusion, because all of this is equipping you to create that new life for yourself. And as you do so, you eventually find yourself in the cave that you fear to enter, but holds the treasure that you seek. And I'm sure you've all heard about the dark nights of the soul, the cocooning phase, when people go into a hole and they sit in a hole and they don't want to see anyone. Some of the greatest minds, Carl Jung, even people like Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, you can see I love Apple, they all went off even Moses, to get biblical, they went off by themselves to a cave up a mountain and spent a lot of time all alone, probably in deep depression of some sorts. But instead of running away from it, they understood that it's part of the hero's journey, because it's when you go into that cocooning phase, just like a butterfly was once that caterpillar, goes into that dark little cocoon, that dark space all by itself, where it feels so completely alone, so lost, so directionless, so stuck, so what am I doing with my life, so sad even, that the gems will present themselves, the beauty will manifest itself, the gift or the Holy Grail will be found. Okay. So a lot of people find themselves in this space, and then they think there's something wrong with them, and then they go to a psychiatrist, and then they get given pills, and they get classified as clinically and deeply and morbidly depressed, when really they may actually be right at the doorstep of a massive, massive breakthrough and transformational point in their life. And so few people are equipped to handle somebody in this space. And, you know, if we all need somebody sometimes to hold our hand and just say, it's okay to be like this, because no one's taught us this stuff, right? They don't teach us any of this at school. And unfortunately, some people that don't have access to these kind of conversations or this kind of knowledge can even go as far as suicide, which we won't go there. But for those of us who are having these conversations, understand that feeling lonely and lost and directionless and confused and sad and irritable and angry, where all your fears and all your limitations seem to be overwhelming you and taunting you, and everything just feels like absolute hell and way too much, and you just completely consumed, you're at the point of a fundamental breakthrough.
Just keep going.
And it's those things that I've just highlighted in that hell that are the dragons that you are going to slay. And those dragons can show up as fears, as limiting beliefs that we're telling ourselves, as self-criticism, self-loathing, the shoulds and the should nots that start to get in our face again, the I cannots, that I'm too old, that I'm too young, that I'm a woman, that I'm black, that I'm white, that I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I can't travel because I'm alone. All of those barriers that pop up, those are the dragons in that moment when you are confronting your call to adventure that you are going to slay. Because the truth is, every child is born filled with love. Fear is something that you learn. So when you slay your fears in whatever context that they come up in, that is what takes us back to our sense of bliss, our sense of it's okay for me to be alive. And the biggest thing that we overcome in this cocooning phase, the biggest dragon that we need to slay, is that we need to get out of our own way. We need to get over ourselves. We are born with a light that is so, so bright, every single one of us. When you look at those ethereal depictions of angels and stuff, that light, that spirit is inside every single one of us. But by the time we're 7 or 10 years old, we've picked up so many layers that we've put around us that we almost look like sumo wrestlers, covered with visible, sometimes with weight, and sometimes invisible emotional barriers and psychological barriers that we've put, that our light is so dim. So it's in this cocoon where we start to strip those layers and we start to peel away that stuff that we've built up so that our light can start to shine again. And this is where people have fundamental breakthroughs and often change their trajectory in terms of their life, in different parts of their life.
I think if I can quickly share, Veronique, and
yes,
we pressed for time, but I had an experience where I really had to dig deep, and I feel like I was in the cocooning phase, and I read the book, The 5 a.m. Club, and it's such a spiritual book, I felt like, but it was really a dark time, and I really had to work through the book, and it helped me so much in the end, you know, together with mentors and together with support structures, but to really, you know, close your eyes and go through the tough times, work through the emotions, work through the, you know, accepting yourself and knowing what should be next. It's not always easy, the cocooning phase, like you're saying, it's dark, and you really need to sit and slay those dragons, sweat
Absolutely.
and blood and tears. Yeah.
And like you say, at that point, you can sort of tap into your mentors again. You can, because you're not a caterpillar in a cocoon, you can actually tap into coaches and counselors or friends. But just be very careful and aware of who you use as your resources. Because when you start to change, a lot of people that don't have the courage to change, that are in denial, will want to take you back to that ordinary world, which is why there are such few heroes. It takes a lot of courage to be a hero. So be careful. Take everybody's advice, but listen to everybody's advice, but be careful whose advice you take. Always check in with yourself and trust your own process. So then when you come out of this cocooning phase, like the caterpillar, the cocoon breaks open and you're now ready to come out of the cave, you are faced with an ordeal. Do you stay in the cave? Or do you come out of the cave? And you need to make a decision. Because you know the life that you had and you know the life that you want. You've now slayed the dragons. What do you do with it? What do you do with it? And obviously, the only way that you can heal is to actually feel all the emotions. Anger, sadness, grief, because they give you an indication, like you've just mentioned. The only way out is through, because you cannot go back and you want to go over there. So you have to go through all of these ugly feelings. You have to break through that cocoon and all of that mess and get out. You basically got to now face the proverbial music. And if I may once again share with you a personal example. So last year, I got on a plane to go to Dubai around about October, I think it was. And for the first time in my life, and I've traveled to over 43 countries. I know so many people all over the world. I'm blessed to have incredible people all over the world. But for the first time in my life, I got on a plane, I sat down and I held my phone, and I didn't have my close family to send a message to and say, the 𝗩𝗲𝗿 is ready for takeoff. And the reality of the losses of my family and my close circle that had all been removed by God's will and intention hit home. And I'm not telling you this because I'm feeling sorry for myself, but at that moment, I faced this ordeal. Do I now become a victim of this loss and let it destroy me and feel sorry for myself? Or do I deal with it? And I confess I haven't entirely dealt with it. I'm still in the process of dealing with it because it is quite an unusual situation. But it was life-changing for me because in that moment I realized that, but I'm still here. I'm still here. So there must be a reason for that, right? And it hit home in a very big way. So you are faced with this ordeal and you have to confront it. You have to stretch that muscle, that obstacle. You have to confront that obstacle. You have to stretch that muscle. You have to confront that deep inner crisis. And it usually hits us at the point of hitting rock bottom, if not at rock bottom. And that is where the transformation happens. And in that moment, there is a reward or a gift that presents itself. The proverbial Holy Grail. There is a sense of acceptance and knowing, even though your rational brain doesn't actually understand it. Your rational brain at that point may not understand it, but there is a shift that happens inside where there is a sense of knowing, there's a sense of, I'm not giving up, there's a sense of clarity, there's a sense of peace that comes over where you feel, I've overcome this, I'm okay, I can move beyond this, I've survived it. All those dragons and stuff that I was slaying, what was I doing? It was even unnecessary. Like, check, like here I am now. And it's in that space, again, that you have to connect with faith, because faith is the thing that then starts to open doors unexpectedly. And people start to show up from God knows where. And you start to rewrite your story. Those dots from the past start to connect, because you can see how all the struggles along the way have actually started to prepare you for this ultimate ordeal that presented itself to you. And there's an experience of transcendence. And your old conditioning is changed into new beliefs. You get a new sense of control. It's like that seize that moment, carpe diem vibe. And you have a sense of my life is lighter. The quest, whether you chose it or it was flung upon you, has now got that sense of achievement. And at this point, you enter phase 3, where you return back to the ordinary world. So yes, that lone traveler who went cocooning does have to now go back to what he or she once knew, but from a place of resurrection. And what that means is, like the phoenix who's risen up, you come with a sense of metamorphical transformation. So you've shed a part of yourself, but you've also transformed a part of yourself. And basically, you can only describe this as a death and a rebirth. This can happen in your faith, in your religion. This can happen in your family. This can happen in your relationships and your work. But somebody wise once said that if you really want to live, if you really want to expand, if you really want to grow, then you've got to die and get reborn 1,000,000 times in your life. Because what that basically means is that every time you die, you're accepting that you have lost something. There is a loss, an acceptance of something is not going to ever be the same again, or this relationship is never going to be. It's a coming to terms with what may never happen. But it also comes with a rebirth and a rediscovery, or a discovery of something new within yourself that takes you forward and moves you forward. And if you look at nature once again, look at the seasons. Not one season is the same, but yet winter is a death and spring is a rebirth that blossoms into full life. And then autumn, things start to die, and then winter, things go into death and hibernation. If you look at plants, sometimes they die back and then they resprout again. Or even if you look at them as a seed and they break open and then they transform. This is what life and expansion is about. Yet we spend our lives fighting it, trying to remain stagnant, trying to keep things the same. And this is where we struggle, because nothing stays the same. Life is about transformation. Having said that, returning to the world that we knew, if we use a person who was addicted, for example, that decided to give up their addiction, if they haven't fully integrated or slain all their dragons and come to terms with their fears and their pains and stuff that caused those dragons and demons to show up, they will likely relapse and have to go through the whole cycle and the pattern again. So if you're noticing patterns in your life that you're like, oh, why is this happening again? Then you have gone through a form of what we have discussed today. And you are in that hamster wheel that's flinging you back to where you started. However, if you now, with today's awareness of the hero's journey, start to unpack that pattern and look at the stages of the hero's journey along the way, you can see what hasn't been addressed and maybe find the courage to go there and address it. And if you don't know how, find mentors or people you can talk to or resources that help you do so, so that you can transform and integrate all of that into your new way of being. And in doing so, heal your wounds, your problems, your issues, and your struggles, and those scratches that you want to itch, or go after what you want and deserve. And then it becomes easier to return to the ordinary world and fit in, because you'll be able to see where you got lost and navigate that. And you'll also be able to see the triggers that popped up that in the past may have derailed you, but you can now choose to walk alongside or walk away from without being pulled into the struggle or the cave. And then the elixir, which is really the gift of transformation that this journey has given you, becomes your story that you share with other people, that you share with your children. It becomes a metaphor for growth and love and wisdom and freedom and knowledge and release and letting go. And with that comes a sense of wanting to share it with other people so that they too can benefit and experience that elixir or that journey or that bliss. And as your circumstances and your life and your perspectives and your attitudes improve, then it enhances the lives of those around you as well. Because your transformation serves as permission and inspiration to other people to embark on their own hero's journey as well. And that then helps you step into the freedom to live, because we were all born to have the freedom to live. It's society with things like passports and imaginary borders and lines and rules of religion and race and stuff that have created all of these barriers and wounds and pains and layers that have stopped you from feeling the freedom to live. But you are allowed to live, and you are allowed to show up differently in the world, and you are allowed to change direction, and you are allowed to go after your dreams, and you are allowed to behave differently, and you are allowed to change things. And it's in that sense of freedom and enlightenment that you also get that feeling of light and balance and harmony. And that is what life is about, learning to confront your dragons and follow your bliss. And in doing so, with every time that you embark on this hero's journey and rediscover another hero within yourself, it actually becomes easier and easier. The dragons become smaller and your skills become a lot more, just like the Matrix. So I'd like to just share this beautiful quote with you guys as we begin to wrap up. That if you speak to someone from the level of your mind, which most of us do, you will speak to their mind. If you speak to someone from the level of your heart, you will speak to your heart. But if you speak to someone through your life and the life story that you've led, you have the capacity to change lives. So it's up to you whether you create a story that you are proud to share. And if you're not proud to share your story, then give yourself permission to change something. Because the journey, the story, your story, becomes the invitation for other people to embark on their journey and their story. And that's why the hero's journey is actually a dynamic and ongoing circle that never ends for you nor for the people around you. So now I think we've got about 12 minutes left. I'd like to hear from you guys if you got anything from this, or if you've learned anything from this, or 𝗪𝗂𝗂, if your question was answered, or maybe you guys are seeing that you are at a particular stage of this hero's journey, or maybe it's exciting you that you have a hero inside of you. Let's hear from you.
So we in the chat box, 𝗩𝗿𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 great event. She can really relate with every aspect that is being discussed. Sometimes you do have to break down before you break through.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that and sharing that. You've who said that?
That's 𝗩𝗿𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂
that sounds like a personal story that you can resonate and relate to. Would you be willing to share a little bit about that with us?
Hey, ladies. Why am I saying that? I've had to go through some difficult moments in my life whereby I felt like I'm breaking down. And what I learned is that sometimes you really have to just go through a rough patch before everything comes together. So life sometimes tends to be like a puzzle and everything is just not coming together. But ultimately at the end, there's always that light at the end of the tunnel, that breakthrough, that end goal to something. So that's one thing that I've actually learned. And this is such a great event. I just want to thank Chanel for inviting me. I'm so big on development, on discovery, finding your own self, finding that hero within you. It's so great. And I really want to say thank you once more.
Thank you, 𝗪𝗲𝗄, for sharing.
Such a pleasure. I'm very glad that you're gonna get through the difficult times. Just keep going and chat to us and share your experiences. Keep on coming to the Inspire Insights. You're going to grow and develop yourself so much throughout this year. And Veronique is also available if you want to have coaching sessions with her, apart from the sessions that we'll be having on the Women in Mining South Africa platform. And then we've also
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I just wanted to add also, just hearing 𝗪𝗪𝗄's story, I think is very important, because a lot of people think that when they hit those obstacles or those down patches where their life feels like it's falling apart and it's crumbling, that there's something wrong with them. And if we have more of these conversations and we give and we share what we've learned here today with other people, then more people realize that there isn't actually something wrong with them, that this is just part of the human experience. And it's that when you're at that stage, you're actually in a stage of growth and transformation. But out there, we've been told, because of all of those shoulds and shouldn'ts, that you can't be sad and you need to be perfectly happy and flatlining and everything needs to be hunky-dory and perfect all the time. But that is not life. That is not the human experience. That is not life. So when we actually embrace the troughs and the ups and downs and the heartbeats of life, and we learn to navigate that, slaying the dragons and enjoying the bliss and going with the ups and downs, that's when we truly start to thrive. And that's when you find things like anger and fear and all of that start to subside. Because when you push it away, when you ignore it, and when you try and deny it, it persists, and that when it bubbles over and it becomes a problem. So people who, for example, have anger issues have just got probably 30, 40 years of suppressed anger that is now bubbling over. So if they can just have an outlet to express that anger and learn a healthier way of being angry, they won't be angry anymore. Somebody who's always crying has probably got decades of suppressed sadness. Their dragon or their demon is the suppressed sadness, that they weren't allowed to cry because nobody knew how to show up for them when they were sad. So they've been pushing it away. But in pushing it away, they tend to cry easily and always be sad and always wait for the shoe to drop. So given a space to now slay that dragon and learn to befriend it, the dragon will then present a gift. And in that sadness, you can learn compassion and how to show up for other people. So
wow, befriending the dragon, that is a new approach. Always want to just slay them. immediately.
No, but haven't you seen that cartoon with the black dragon? That's what it's all about.
No, it is. I understand the concept.
No.
I can
Like,
appreciate it.
if you review these notes, from now on, every movie you watch, you'll see there is a hero's journey. There is a person that needs to be challenged or slayed or confronted. There's fears that need to be overcome. There's a lot of like unstable drama, chaos, and then there is the dawn and the gift that comes afterwards, whether that's romance or an achievement or a job or whatnot.
So
Does
we have
anybody
another
else have
message in
something
the-
to share?
We have another message in the chat box, but if anyone wants to say something, you're welcome to unmute yourself, raise your hand, and then you can go ahead.
Please do.
In the chat is saying that this workshop came at such a right time. She's on a low streak and currently needed this. Thank you for being a phenomenal woman and providing this opportunity.
Oh, wow. Well, we are here. So if you need someone to talk to, please reach out. No one is alone. And so often when we struggle, we think we're alone. But when we actually talk to each other, we realize that we all tend to struggle with the same dragons, and they just show up in slightly different colors sometimes or in slightly different packages. But when we actually talk to each other, we realize that we're not so alone. So know that you guys are not alone. There's always someone out there to talk to. 𝗪𝗲𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗴𝗲𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂, was your question answered? You didn't say.
Yes, I'm very happy. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Nobody wants to share anything. No questions.
Veronique,
No.
am I audible?
Yes,
Carla.
please. Hi, Carla.
I had to press some buttons on the computer, just looking at where, because I tried to speak before and it wasn't audible, but I found the button.
We can hear you now.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for a very powerful session. And it's actually spoke to my heart today. What I take out of this, I first entered with the heading and say, yes, I am in this space. And then I realized that I need to admit to myself what I'm afraid of. And one of the things I'm taking out of this is I need to share. I need to go and confess. I've been keeping up all the things that I'm afraid of, and I'm going to go out from here and I'm going to confess to my family. I'm going to start put things into action, which I was afraid of. And it sparks, the thing that you said today, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And there's a lot of things that, that will resonate with me from what you said. But I just thank you. I really found today's session extremely valuable.
Wow, Carla, and I'd like to acknowledge the courage that it takes, because the word confession, without you saying what you're going to confess, but you mentioned family and you mentioned confession. So obviously those are hard truths that you've been carrying around, that have been eating away at you, that you are now choosing to go and share and be vulnerable about to your family. And that is scary. That is confronting a dragon, and that is very scary, and it's very uncertain, because you have no idea how it's going to turn out. And I want to just acknowledge the courage it takes to voice that in this group, and the willingness to actually go and do that as well. And I salute you, and remember that as long as you're acting out of authenticity and your truth, and you are not holding on to the picture of how you hope it's going to turn out, and trust that it's going to turn out the way it is meant to turn out for you and you specifically, then I wish you well, and I hope it turns out positively and greater than your wildest dreams. But if nothing else, you are going to lift the baggage of carrying around whatever it is you've been carrying around for clearly a long time. Thank you for sharing.
That definitely will make you vulnerable. And where I know, I've been through coaching courses, trying to go on the journey of being a coach myself. And the somatic is one of the things that I'm paying a lot of attention to. And when I know it struck the chord is when my heart started racing. And then I knew this is it.
The scratch, it's a scratch of sorts. Hey? Yeah. But what you're talking about is a little bit deeper than coaching, which is why I am saluting you, because it goes on a deeper level. It goes more into the psychological level. So good luck, and if you're willing, pop us an email and let us know how it goes, and we're here vouching for you. We're your allies.
So this is my first time on a session like this. Is this like a monthly group, quarterly, or how does it?
We'll be having Inspire Insights every month on the second Wednesdays, but we'll be putting out adverts throughout the entire month. So just keep an eye on the WEMSA website, on the LinkedIn pages, on the social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. So we will be having a session on different topics every month with Veronique. And perhaps I can touch on the next topic just to spark your interest. Or do you want to touch on it, Veronique?
No, I had one more slide here. If nobody else wants to share anything else. I did have this slide, but I don't. Do you guys want me to whiz through the slide, or can it's really what the hero's journey helps us with? So can I have a thumbs up if you guys are happy to spend maybe another 5 minutes with us? Otherwise, I'll skip through this.
Happy?
Okay, so just quickly to summarize, the hero's journey basically, the buttons don't work again. Skus toch. Yeah, the hero's journey helps us to consider our own areas of complacency, denial, or stagnant areas where we've got a little bit too comfortable, where we've stopped growing. And if you look at a plant or in nature, if you confine it to something, eventually it's going to start dying. It needs to keep growing. So if you don't get real with yourself and go, where am I stagnant? Where am I not growing? Where have things become a little bit too routine? So the hero's journey helps us look at that. It helps us identify our personal calls to adventure. So like Carla said, when her heart starts racing, that's her scratch. Some people might go, oh, I don't want to go there. It might show up as resistance. It might show up as fear. You might have an effect like, oh, I'm out of here, stick my head in the ground like an ostrich. Any of those kind of behaviors give you an indication of where your call to adventure is. And then you can start mapping out steps to pursue it. It also makes us look into our fears and what's holding us back from acting on our call to adventure. So once we have pinpointed something is coming up here, there's a should or a shouldn't, there's something that I'm not happy with, something here needs to change, then we can start going, okay, what's stopping me from changing it? And from there, you can start digging in terms of what are my fears, what's holding me back. We can also start to see whether we have the right people in our lives. Do we have the right support systems? Do we have the right teachers, coaches, mentors to help us navigate our obstacles in a way that actually serves us? Because a lot of us have family and friends that are well-meaning but don't actually serve us very well and often keep us from our call to adventure and keep us stuck. They will swim around with us in the mess and the blame and the finger pointing, but they won't actually push our buttons and call us out on our nonsense. Okay. And in doing that, we can also start confronting our dragons, where we actually discover our true transformative power. Because like I said, when you confront your dragons and you befriend them, they will actually give you the gift to your personal liberation. And we also realize that feeling alone is part of the struggle. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's not that you don't belong. It's actually part of the struggle and the cocooning period that takes us into transformation and resurrection, like the phoenix or like the butterfly. And we realize that whatever ordeal we face, there is really no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. There is only learning and there are only gifts. And then, of course, life is about both challenges and rewards. It can't always be that everything is hunky-dory. It's how we deal with the ups and downs. And then there's a hero's journey waiting in each and every single one of us, not just once, but 1,000,000 times over, in birth and death, 100 million times over. And that is how we find ourselves. So becoming aware of our shadows or our dragons, we are directed to our fears, insecurities, and resistances. And by slaying them, we're ultimately guided towards what we truly want and deserve, which is our bliss. And therefore, we discover our own personal hero. I've also just put a link in here. If you guys go onto the YouTube link, or when they load this onto the, I guess they're going to send you an email with the details, but there's a YouTube link. And for those of you who want to go deeper into this content, the book is Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces. It is very fat and it is a lot to read, but it is quite amazing. Or just watch your favorite movie and see what resonates with you. And then last but not least, everybody that attends, if you do need counseling, or you do want a coach or somebody to hold your hand or unpack stuff, or you're keen to embark on a Heal Your Life course, you're welcome to reach out to me. All attendees get a 13% discount merely by being part of �10𝗿𝗂. And 13 is the number said to represent the divine feminine. Need I say more? That is why. Okay. And next month's topic is the biology of belief. And that really revolves around your thoughts and your beliefs, and that they create your reality, and that they can actually change your reality. And that's it from me.
So much, Veronique. Thank you to all of the ladies that attended tonight. It was fantastic, very insightful, and I can't wait for the next month. Like Veronique mentioned, the video will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. There will also be posts going out on all of the social media platforms. To go to the link, if you can't find us on YouTube, it's Women in Mining South Africa. That is the name of the account. And then we would love to hear from you. So you're welcome to email us. My email address is on the website, on the �10𝗿𝗂 website, and we will also share Veronique's email address. If you want to contact her and want to share stories or book a session with her, that would be fantastic. Once again, thank you so much, Veronique, for giving your time to us. This is voluntarily work, so she's giving her time for free. We really appreciate it. This is invaluable, and hopefully next time we have 60 ladies attending. So if you enjoyed tonight, go and tell your friends so they can join us for the next one. And the date for the next one, the next Inspire Insights, is the 10th of April, same time and same place. So go register on the �10𝗿𝗂 website and then you'll receive the link. That's it from me.
Yeah, and if you guys do sort of come across a hero's journey, or find that after today's session you have a breakthrough or something happens, please pop us an email. Like, I love to hear the impact that these things have. So even if we don't have a session, just pop me an email and celebrate your success or your breakthrough. I love to hear that. So know that there is someone that understands and is willing to listen. And if no one else has anything else to add or say, or if you need to ask any questions, we can be here for another, 5-10 minutes. Otherwise, we can bid farewell till next week. Next month. So.
Yes, thank you, ladies. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.